You could spend a lifetime trying to achieve retirement, or you can do it in 10 years or less. I'll let you decide which one you want to do. Today in this video, I'm going to give you all the secrets that you need to know in order to become financially independent and retire early within 10 years or less, even if you're just starting from $0. It's important that the first thing that we do in this video is we actually define what financial independence is. Now, there are many different types of financial independence. There are many different ways that you can define it. But for the sake of this video and for the sake of, so we're all on the same board here, financial independence as defined in this video will be utilizing the 4% safe withdrawal rule. The 4% safe withdrawal rule is based off of what's called the Trinity study. The Trinity study is a study done at Trinity University in Texas, and it was done in the 1990s, and basically the findings of the study found that if someone were to retire during that time frame and they would have utilized the 4% safe withdrawal rule, which means if they were to withdraw 4% or less of their assets per year, then their investment would last them several years. Now, the Trinity study was done over a time period of, I believe it was 20 years, but it has since been updated and re-looked at to cover new periods such as the Great Recession, and it's also been extended for up to 30 years. Now, keep in mind, this safe withdrawal rule is saying you withdraw 4% or less of your assets per year. So whatever the total amount of your assets are, as long as you withdraw 4% or less of that, then your money will last pretty much all of these years. Now, that's based on historical findings. So they basically used historical data. They use different asset allocations, so they would have ones like 50% stocks, 50% bonds, 75% stocks, 25% bonds, and so on in different ways. And kind of what the study found was that as long as you took less than 4%, or at least 4% or less of your assets per year, it lasted for that entire period. You never ran out of money. In some scenarios, you were left with quite a bit of money. So putting that 4% rule into perspective, if you were to want to retire today and you had $1 million in assets, or your net worth was $1 million, your investments were worth $1 million, then you could take 4% of that, which would be $40,000. So $40,000 per year is what you would get to spend if you were worth $1 million, and you would be utilizing the 4% safe withdrawal rule. The 4% safe withdrawal rule can be applied to pretty much any net worth. So if you were to have $2 million in net worth, then you could spend $80,000 per year and pretty much still be in that safe withdrawal rule range. So as we define it in this video, financial independence is going to be utilizing the 4% safe withdrawal rule. You are going to withdraw 4% or less of your assets per year, and you are pretty much going to live on that forever. I also want you to keep in mind that this safe withdrawal rule assumes that you never make another penny in your life, which if you're trying to retire early, it's probably very doubtful. You'll probably want to start a side business. Eventually, you'll probably want to get a side job or maybe even a hobby that pays some money. So this assumes kind of the worst case scenario. So the 4% safe withdrawal rule is very well known in the financial independence community, and it is very highly regarded as one of the greatest rule of thumbs. Now, of course, not all rule of thumbs can apply to everyone. I have actually talked about that before in a video, but this is one that I have really dig deep down into. I've looked at the data, I've looked at studies, and I've looked at very much a lot of different videos, and I've looked at a lot of different articles on the 4% safe withdrawal rule, and I believe highly in the 4% safe withdrawal rule, and that is why I define it as becoming financially independent, no matter what your age is. So now that we know what financial independence is and what we're striving for, let's get down to it. How are you going to achieve financial independence? How are you going to get enough wealth? How are you going to accumulate enough wealth in order to utilize the 4% safe withdrawal rule? Well, the first thing that you're going to have to do if you want to retire early in 10 years or less is you're going to have to get your expenses in check. You're going to have to reduce your expenses. It doesn't matter how much money you are making. You could be making $100,000 per year. You can be making $200,000 per year. But if you're spending $100,000 per year or you're spending $200,000 per year, then your savings rate is essentially zero. And really, if you want to get to financial independence in a short time frame, you're going to need a high savings rate. So you're going to need to keep most of the money that you spend. If you're on a median income or a somewhat average income, then this means that you're going to have to be pretty frugal. So reducing your expenses is very essential if you want to achieve financial independence in any kind of short time frame. This doesn't mean that you have to give up all fun in your life and just sit at home all day watching TV. Quite the opposite. You can live a very great life in financial independence or in life in general, living on very little. A lot of people around the world do it, and they probably do it on a lot less than what I'm going to recommend that you do in this video in order to achieve financial independence. Part of being frugal and reducing your expenses in order to achieve financial independence is finding things in your life that aren't optimized and then optimizing them. There are three big main expenses that you should focus on when you're first trying to figure out how to reduce your expenses. We call these the big three, and they are housing, transportation, and food. So they're pretty much all-encompassing, and these three expenses can pretty much make up anywhere from 50 to 70% of most people's budgets. If you really stop to think about it, these three categories really do make up a huge portion of your budget. It makes up a huge portion of my budget as well. So these are the first things that you want to optimize, and pretty much in that order. Housing is usually the most expensive thing that you pay every single month, whether that is rent, whether that is a mortgage, property taxes, house insurance, renter's insurance, home maintenance, repairs, and things like that. Everything associated with your housing and basically to put a roof over your head is quite expensive, and it probably makes up a very large portion of your budget. Next, we have transportation. This is probably the second largest expense that you have, and many of us don't even realize that it's so large. When everyone looks at their transportation expenses, what's the one thing that they do see every single month, guaranteed? It's gas. So a lot of people think that their car gas is really the only expenses they have for transportation, for getting them from point A to point B, but it's very, very untrue. You have so many other expenses associated with just transporting yourself, especially if you own a car. Now, I'm not saying that you have to give up your vehicle and go exclusively with public transportation or walk everywhere. That would be very good for reducing your expenses, but you can also have a vehicle and cut down your expenses on that extremely low. The first step is realizing how expensive your transportation is. A new car costs upwards of $30,000, $40,000 if you buy it new. And everyone knows as soon as you drive it off the lot, it loses a tremendous amount of value. After the first year, the second year, and the third year, the decline in value of your vehicle is dramatic. It's quite shocking, actually. And that's why if you are buying a vehicle, I always recommend used, because someone else has already taken that steep depreciation. And you can kind of get that sweet spot of a pretty new car at a lot lower of a price. There's also many other things when it comes to transportation, such as insurance, maintenance, repairs, registration, taxes, and yes, gasoline. So there are many other things that accumulate into a very large transportation expense. Just to drive a vehicle from point A to point B, it costs a lot more than what it costs in gas to fill up your tank. So that is why it is essential that you realize how expensive transportation really is for yourself, so you can optimize that transportation expense down to a fraction of what it is now. And third on the list, the big three, number three, is food. So food is probably the third largest expense that you have, and that can be all-encompassing. I'm not just talking about groceries, but also eating out. So depending on who you are, you might eat out a lot, you might not eat out very much at all. But food is a very large expense that a lot of people don't really realize, especially if they don't track their expenses. If you're actually eating out, whether it be fast food or restaurants, several times a month, it adds up to quite a bit. Even just getting groceries at home can be quite expensive if you're throwing most of them away like most people do. So optimizing your food expenses is a very important thing to do if you want to reduce your expenses. Once you have gotten these big three expenses optimized to a really good point, then you can focus on the smaller things. There's that other 30 to 40% of your budget that can also be optimized. But working on the big three first is going to get you a majority of the way to reducing your expenses to an optimized level. So far we've defined financial independence, and we know that one thing that you really need to do is you need to reduce your expenses. And when you reduce your expenses, you should have some excess cash flow from what you were spending before, but now you have this extra money. So what do you got to do with that money? Well, the first thing you need to learn is you need to learn how to save money. Now, saving money is, I think, very important as a baby step towards investing. Saving money is basically taking the money that you would have spent otherwise and kind of accumulating it. Saving is very different from investing, and even though in the financial independence community, a lot of people talk about their savings rate, they're usually not referring to actually saving money. Certainly when I mention savings rate, I do not actually talk about saving money. I'm strictly talking about investing. But for this, number 3, what we're talking about, learn how to save money. We are strictly talking about just accumulating cash. So once you've reduced your expenses, or while you're working on reducing your expenses, as you have extra money left over, as you should if you actually did reduce your expenses, you need to learn how to save that money. And the very first thing you need to do, if you don't already, is build an emergency fund. Now, a lot of people like to say 3 to 6 months. It really depends on your risk tolerance and how your situation is with your income right now. So I myself, I keep closer to the 3 months of living expenses as an emergency fund. That might be fine for you, or you might need upwards of 6 months or maybe even more. It really just depends on the person. But emergency fund is the very first step in building your savings and pretty much just learning how to save. So you basically accumulate a large portion of cash, you put it into a savings account or something very liquid that can be accessed in an emergency pretty much in no time. And then you get that up to a point to where you have enough to reach your emergency savings goal. Now you can also take this time to save for other things, but for the purpose of this, you just need to learn how to save first, especially if you're not used to learning how to save. And remember that saving is very different from investing, which I'm going to discuss next. But before I do, if you're liking this video, do me a huge favor real quick and just give me a thumbs up on YouTube. Give me a like. I would really appreciate that. And while you're there, go to the other side and click the subscribe button and subscribe to this channel, because I'm putting out information on personal finance every single week. Right now, I'm putting it out on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. and Fridays at 3 p.m. So I want it to go straight to you because I know there's something that I talk about that I can help you with. Okay, getting back to investing. So investing is basically step number 4. So first we have identified what financial independence is. We have learned that we need to reduce our expenses. And number 3, we need to learn how to save. Now number 4, we are going to finally learn how to invest. So depending on where you are right now in your financial situation of what you're doing, what we've been talking about, you should have already know how to save, and you kind of should have saved a good amount of money up by now. But saving is not going to get you to financial independence, or at least it's not going to last very long. That's because saving doesn't really earn that much money. You know, even if you put it into very safe investments, you're usually not going to be earning a high enough return for it to make it your worthwhile. So what you need to do is you need to learn how to invest. And what I personally do, and what I recommend for a lot of individual investors, is to simply just invest in index funds. Index funds are mutual funds that track a market index. For example, you might have heard of the Dow Jones. So the Dow Jones is a market index of 30 of the largest publicly traded companies in the United States. Maybe you've also heard of the S&P 500. So the S&P 500 is kind of the same thing. It is basically 500 very large companies in the United States that are publicly traded. An index fund seeks to match the returns of that index, being in the form of a mutual fund. So an index fund that is trying to match the S&P 500 index is going to pretty much have about 500 securities of the 500 largest companies in its portfolio. And what you're doing as an individual investor is you're basically buying a share of that mutual fund, and that mutual fund holds those equities or those stocks. So there's a pool of many investors that are investing in this index fund, and the index fund holds the equities, or it holds the stocks. There's plenty more that goes into it, but really once you learn the basics of index fund investing, getting a proper asset allocation, that is a proper allocation between stocks and bonds, between international and US market or whatever your home country is. Once you get past the very basics of learning how to invest in index funds, it's really simple, and it doesn't really require too much in-depth knowledge, because index fund investing is very, very simple. It is probably one of the best ways to invest for most people, especially if you want to do passive income investing. It's personally what I do and what I've been doing for several years, and I've grown my net worth very high by doing so, by being diligent and investing a certain amount of money each month into these index funds. I've slowly just built up my wealth, and I'm getting really near to that financial independence number of mine, which is what you should be striving for if you want to achieve financial independence. You're going to need to break the gap between saving and start investing, because investing, even in something so simple like index funds, it's going to get you that return that's going to allow compound interest to pretty much grow your net worth. Now, if we're trying to achieve financial independence in 10 years or less, compound interest isn't really going to work that much magic because compound interest needs a lot longer of a time frame to pretty much do something significant. So a majority of the money is going to be built upon your savings or pretty much your investments, what you're putting into the investments. But a good portion of that should come from return on your investments. That keeps getting reinvested and thus kind of creating a snowball in your favor to grow your net worth. So index fund investing is really easy. It's really effective, especially for passive individual investors. And that is something that you really need to learn. Number 5, what I want to talk about is you need to reduce your taxes. You need to know how to reduce your taxes because a tax is kind of a hidden expense that pretty much all of us have to face. And legally avoiding as much tax as possible is going to allow us to keep more of our income in our pocket and basically transfer more of that income into our investments and thus grow our net worth even more. Imagine if you're just losing a portion of your income, a percentage of your income, just to taxes for no real good reason, when you could legally avoid doing so just by making some smart moves. One of the best moves that you can make on your journey to financial independence is utilize tax-advantaged accounts. So tax-advantaged accounts can help reduce your taxable income. So by simply investing in these tax-advantaged accounts, such as individual retirement accounts or your 401k and things like that, you can simply reduce your taxable income now so that you pay less taxes now and you can let your net worth grow tax-free in the process. Other things that are really important to know for minimizing your taxes is to know the tax deductions that you can legally take, and you should rightfully do so, as well as the tax credits that you can legally take and that you should definitely do so as well. Utilizing tax credits and tax deductions is going to help dramatically lower your tax bill. So just learning some basics on how to minimize your taxes or speaking to a professional on how to do so will definitely help you out in the long run when it comes to building your wealth and achieving financial independence. So what have we talked about so far? The first thing we've done is we defined what financial independence is. Very important to know. Then we focused on reducing our expenses. Once we have done that, we've learned to save some of that money so that our reduction in expenses doesn't go to waste. So now we learn to invest some of that money. So now investing is more important than saving when it comes to achieving financial independence because you're going to need that better return on your investment to get to that high net worth. And a big part of that was reducing your taxes, which was number 5. Now here in number 6, step number 6 is we can increase our income. So up to this point, you have basically focused on reducing your expenses and then saving that difference or investing that difference. But what if you want to go a step further? The next step would be increasing your income. So it's great that you've reduced your expenses and that you've learned how to save and you've learned how to invest, right? But you can only do so much with so much income. So there are some options for you to increase your income. And one of the most common ones is to get a side job, get a second job, or do something in the gig economy. This can be a great option for increasing your income on the side, kind of when you just want to do it. Another option is you could start a business. Starting a business might not pay off immediately, but it might be able to pay you off big time in the future. Starting a business is a really good way to make some more income. Another idea that most people don't talk about is get a promotion at work or move to a different job at your current employer. If you like where you're working now, why not get paid more to do so? You can either ask for a raise, you can get a promotion to a different position. Just have good performance at work and keep those opportunities open for you. Making more in your current job is one of the best ways, in my opinion, to increase your income. And lastly, in order to increase your income, who says you have to stay in the job you're at now? You could be shopping around right now for a different job. If it pays well, the benefits are better, then why not? No one says that you have to keep the job that you're at now in order to start your path towards financial independence. There are many different options for increasing your income, and it can definitely help you out in your pursuit of financial independence. Now that we have all that together, it's time for you to calculate your financial independence. You need to figure out your number, and this is how you do it. Right now, you have some of your money going towards savings, maybe you have some of it going towards investing. The percentage of money that is going towards investing every month, that is known as your savings rate in financial independence terms. But it really means is your investment rate. And that is what is really important. In order to figure out how long it's going to take you to achieve financial independence, I want you to try to open up this calculator called networthify.com. I'll also put a link in the description below. But networthify.com, if you go on there, you're going to see the calculator, the retirement calculator, and it's really awesome. So on that calculator, which I'll put up on the screen right now, you can input your current annual income, your current savings rate, which is your investment rate, and your current annual expenses. And then it'll give you a percentage, which is your current savings rate. Make sure you put the show more options so you can adjust some things. So if you have any investments right now, you can change that 0 to something else. And then you can put in your expected annual return on investments. I like to use 7% for my projections, but your mileage may vary. It really highly depends. And then the withdrawal rate should be 4%. So if I put an annual income of $80,000 and a savings rate of 65%, that means that you have to save $52,000 per year, or put that amount of money toward your investments. This leaves you with $28,000 of annual expenses. This might sound shocking to you, but I can assure you it is very much possible. But it might take time for you to get to that level of savings rate. If you want to spend more, you could always increase your income. Having a current savings rate of 65%, starting at a $0 net worth, will allow us to achieve financial independence and retire early in 9.8 years, according to this calculator, with the information that we have inputted. How does that sound to you? 9.8 years from now, you could be financially independent if you are able to invest 65% of your income and live on just 35% of your income. 9.8 years. Less than 10 years from now, you could be financially independent. And really, I have given you 7 steps for you to do so. And the concept for achieving financial independence is really that simple. Now, I'm not going to lie, there's definitely a lot more that goes into it, and there's definitely a lot more information that you are going to need in order to achieve your goal of financial independence and retire early. And if you're ready to get started on your journey to financial independence, give me a quick like on this video and subscribe as well, because I'm putting out new information on personal finance every Tuesday and Friday at 3 p.m. And I want to help you along the way to your journey. I know that there is many things that I can help you with along your path to financial independence, and there might be something that you can help me with as well. Please leave me a comment below in this video and tell me about your financial independence goals. Do you want to achieve financial independence? When do you want to achieve financial independence? What's your plan for doing so? Please leave me a comment. Let's talk about it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Zach from OnCashflow.com, and I hope to see you next time.